Hello, everybody. Mark Schafltein with you, and this is Election Edge Thursday's edition. 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 out west, and there's been a lot of developments in the presidential race, and we're going to break it all down for you today. We've got Garland Favorito with me. Garland from Roswell, Georgia. You're right in the thick of it in one of the swing states, the noted swing states. And based upon the polling I've seen, this race is plus or minus a point either way, tight as a tick. Happy to have you on Election Edge today. Give me your perspective on what's happening in the Peach State, the great state of Georgia.
Well, Mark, I guess the perspective from our point of view, Voter GA as being a nonpartisan organization, is we are just trying to have an honest election here in 2024. It was not an honest election in 2020. Probably the most corrupt election in Georgia history. Georgia was victimized by private money, $45 million worth that came in from the Zuckerbucks, the Center for Technology Civic Life. That money was spent 94% to counties won by Joe Biden. That's a violation of our equal protection and due process rights. And then another way we were victimized was through ballot trafficking operations and ballot box stuffing. People have probably seen the 2,000 Mules video with where you can literally watch them stuffing ballot box in the middle of the night. Hundreds of thousands of votes came in after the election. That changed the results of not only the presidential race, but the Senate race. And then the third way we were victimized is through electronic vote manipulation. We have provided evidence now that Fulton County had actually electronically altered their results prior to certification in 2020.
Let me ask you this, Garland. Looking forward to 2024, you were involved in some election integrity. Can you tell our viewers and listeners, is the state of Georgia poised to have a fair election? Because I think that's what all Americans want. As long as Americans have confidence in the integrity of our voting system, which is the bedrock of our republic, then I think people can accept the results one way or another. It is going to be an extremely close election. You were involved with that. Has the state of Georgia and the Secretary of State's office, Brett Raffensperger, and the governor, Brian Kemp, with the leadership needed to make these changes, done the things to help improve the situation over where it was in 2020?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. The Secretary of State's office has done little or nothing, but thankfully we've had a very, very productive legislative sessions over the last couple of years, as well as our new state election board, which is implementing new rules to help us out. Just to give you an example of some of the legislative changes we've made in the last couple of years, the legislature has banned all outdoor drop boxes. You can no longer stuff ballots into a drop box in the middle of the night. They have banned all private money coming in from external sources to the counties. They have made sure that all elections in the future will be conducted on ballot security paper with visible watermarks. They have put in rules to ensure that all of the ballots that have been collected prior to election day are tabulated by 8 o'clock on election night. So no more stuffing the ballot box days after and counting votes for 3 days like we did last time. Those are just a few of the rules. They're making ballots public record here in Georgia for more transparency. Poll workers can now hear and see all processes. They won't be stuck in a corner 6 feet away anymore, or even further. And then they've improved chain of custody of the ballots, handling going from election official to election official, sign off and sealing procedures for those containers. So those are just a few of the changes that the legislature has made over the last few years to hopefully do what you said and give us a more secure 2024 election.
Well, based upon what you just told me, no wonder Governor Brian Kemp has an approval rating north of 60% in the state. I mean, those bills wouldn't become law without his signature and probably his leadership. So whether it was your help the governor's help or whomever, the legislature that brought those reforms forward. Just as someone who is obviously a partisan, I'm very pleased that one of the key swing states, Georgia, is taking those steps, and that we can at least look forward to a fair election. We'll call it election season because there's no such thing as election day anymore, but we'll call it election season. So, Garland, let me go back to my first question with you. Now that we've established that Georgia has taken steps to, do a fair election, at least on paper, based upon where we are right now. I've seen polling in Georgia that shows Trump with a slight lead. I've seen some that shows Harris with a slight lead. You're on the ground. How do you see the state trending right now? And is it the toss-up that plus or minus a point that virtually every pollster and media outlet have it at right now?
Well, it's difficult to say, Mark, because the issue is whether or not we'll have an honest election. More and more evidence is coming out, literally, it's still coming out, that Donald Trump may have actually been cheated out of the election in 2020. So it may not have been a blue state all as we were told. And it's still going to be fairly close no matter what. It's very hard to predict what may happen. Our focus has been not so much on who wins, but to make sure that the election is legitimate. And we can't have another fiasco like we had last time. I think if it's legitimate, I think that the results will take care of themselves. As you said earlier, if everyone can prove that who won, there's no issue. Whoever loses needs to have the assurance that the election was conducted fairly. They did not have that assurance in 2020. And hopefully we're going to try to get there this time. We still have to unplug the machines, though, long term. They are a threat to verifiable vote counts. You cannot verify these machines. The votes are accumulated in a QR code, which you as a voter cannot verify. It's just obscene that we're even using them to begin with, and that they're relatively new, purchased in the last few years. So those are.
Yeah, but I think the key point is here. What you said is the state has taken overwhelming action to do the best it can to present a fair election, regardless of who wins. And I think you just made the key point. Whoever doesn't win has to be satisfied that it was conducted in a fair manner. When you're having an election like this that is projected, literally it could come down to 20,000 votes here and there, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina. These are all tight races. We've been talking about it on Election Edge, Garland, for the better part of the last 45 days. And sometimes the polling moves up in Harris's favor, sometimes down, sometimes Trump's up. But one thing that we have noticed, and I'll get away from the prediction business again, I really want to go to the opinion side. What did Georgians make of the fact that Donald Trump is like an open book? I mean, he is everywhere, whether he's in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan. I mean, he literally is an open book. Him and J.D. Vance are going to all the swing states. They're opening themselves up to questions of voters, questions from reporters. And yet, on the other hand, Kamala Harris has done one interview with the mainstream or legacy media since she became the nominee. Trump's done close to 40. And even yesterday, Tim Walz, he's at an event and reporters tried to ask him questions. He just brushed them off. I mean, what are Georgians saying about just the accessibility to the candidates? Is it playing as an issue in Georgia, or does it not matter to them?
Well, Trump is wildly popular in Georgia, and if he has a rally, he has 20 to 50,000 people show up to see him. Kamala Harris has had a rally here in Atlanta, and basically she has to have entertainment in order to draw a few thousand people. So that's kind of the lay of the land here in Georgia. I don't know about the accessibility in regards to the two candidates, but I think really the key difference is the policies that both candidates represent here for the people in the state of Georgia.
Nationally, the key elections, Garland, are the economy, inflation, border security, crime, and Trump seems to have an edge on all of those issues. Harris leads on the abortion issue, health care. From your travels around the state, and particularly in Roslyn, north of Atlanta, what are the main issues that the voters in Georgia are looking at? Because again, as a swing state, people's opinions are important. And despite the fact that Trump may have certain advantages there, the election is tight. So are those still the key issues in Georgia, or is there other things that Georgians are talking about?
The number one issue in Georgia, which hasn't changed in the last 4 years, is the integrity of the election. That is the key issue here, especially among Republicans. It is the number one issue in Georgia, and it has been for the last 4 years. As a result of the 2020 election, vast majority of Republicans here are convinced that they were cheated out of the 2020 election. Ironically, just to flip the cards there, we as a nonpartisan organization had many Democrats with us all the way back to our founding in 2006, because they believed they were cheated out of the 2002 election when unverifiable electronic voting first came into Georgia. So the trend has gone slightly from Democrats to Republicans. Republicans are now more concerned about the election integrity issue, but up until 2019, it was the top priority for Democrats. So the issue hasn't really changed here in Georgia much. It's just become the focus of Republicans now, as opposed to Democrats, in the difference between 2019 and 2020.
Well, those are key points, because if that's the most important issue on a lot of Republicans' minds, I would assume that Democrats are equally as concerned about it, because although the Democratic Party won in 2020, they lost in 2016. Both these elections are very close, and let's call it what it is. Georgia has turned from a red state to a purple state, and by virtue of the fact that which used to vote reliably Republican, but now's a different time. Demographics are different in the state. But the fact of the matter is, in these 7 swing states, Garland, we hope that the integrity piece does not become a factor in this election, because we want fair, we want free and honest elections. That's the goal here. And I hope that the advocacy that your organization put forward in Georgia, which seemed to be fairly nonpartisan from my perspective, looking at what you were able to accomplish, I can't imagine that. Well, I say this all the time. I can't imagine, and then it turns out Democrats are against a lot of this stuff. I can't imagine. So I'm not exactly the most qualified for that. But it seems on paper, if an independent voter, Garland, was looking at the changes that were made in the state of Georgia, my guess is they would probably approve of those actions.
Absolutely. They're all nonpartisan actions that we just described. Another key issue is to make sure that the election ballots are transparent and available to the public. We want anyone to be able to prove that the election results were accurate. So that's another key factor that we are hoping for here.
Okay. On that note, we're going to take a quick break here, about 90 seconds. But when we come back, we're going to dive into the meat of the election. Where do things stand right now? Who's trending up? Who's trending down? And we'll give you an update here. Election Edge, back in 90 seconds.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV Store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. Special shout out to Dr. Kirk Elliott, 720-605-3900. He is a great friend of Patriot TV, a strong supporter. And folks, if you're looking to diversify with all the craziness happening in the stock market, pick up the phone and call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals. They're a great company and a true friend of Patriot TV. Garland, before I break down some of the polling pieces here, one of the things when I was doing my notes for preparation here on the show today, you sent me some notes about auditing and verifications. What were you were talking earlier about some of the safeguards that were brought into this. How does audit and the verifications play a point in ensuring that the election is fair in the state of Georgia?
Thank you, Mark. That's a great question. So first of all, we've been told by certain elections officials that logic and accuracy testing can ensure that the systems count correctly on election day. That is completely false. Dr. Haldeman, as one of many experts who has explained that there is no form of pre-election testing that can prevent malware-based fraud. And the reason is that the voting system can be programmed to circumvent logic and accuracy testing or pre-election testing and then count differently on the day of the election based on the number of ballots cast or the date of the election. It can recognize that and have different algorithms. So that means that you can't rely on any kind of pre-election testing to ensure the voting system is counting correctly. What you have to do is have audits. As you said. Now, audits, the problem with that is you can't just audit one race and think that the rest of the races are going to be okay because, if you only audit one race, that doesn't prove that any other race on the ballot was counted correctly. You have to audit every individual race. And that can be tedious and cumbersome. But in order to ensure a proper result, that's what you have to do. Georgia does not have adequate audits at this time. However, we did implement legislative improvements to improve the audits. It's still not adequate. There really is nothing short of a publicly recorded hand count of the votes. That way, everyone can have assurance that the results are correct. We're not there yet, so we have that issue to deal with. As well as what we use here is a ballot marking device, which is a touchscreen system that creates that QR coded ballot I was telling you about, versus a hand marked paper ballot, which has no QR code in it, and it's actually more secure. So those are some of the things that we need to do better at. But to get to your point, we certainly need as many audits of as many races and as deep of an audit as we can possibly get to ensure the election results are correct.
Well, let me ask you this, Garland, before I get into the polling piece. I'm just thinking logistically here. I mean, like for example, the state of Florida, just south of Georgia, they run the elections. You know, we all know what happened back in 2000. They made significant changes, and there hasn't really been any issues in Florida elections since that point. They run pretty efficiently. There's been no complaining on losing sides. Seems to be working, and in a lot of states it does. So I'm hopeful that Georgia can come through and have this be a positive, because it seems to me, again, I'm just a layperson here, that when you have to get results in quickly, from a time perspective, how do you avoid it? To fully have it audited, wouldn't you put yourself in a situation like they did back in Florida in 2000 when, literally they were, I don't want to use the word looking at looking glasses for hanging chads. We don't have that anymore. But doesn't that delay the results getting announced if you audit the night of an election?
Well, it depends on what you want. Do you want quick results, or do you want truthful, accurate results? I vote, and our people want truthful, accurate results. You can get those in the same amount of time. In Florida, since you mentioned it, was an interesting point there. The one thing about that of Florida and the hanging chad incident in 2000 was they did have actual ballots to go back to count the results to ensure that they were correct. Georgia, just 2 years later, implemented a wholly unverifiable paperless system in which they could never recount an election properly. They could only reprint the previous unverifiable results. And we have suffered through 20 years of disenfranchisement for that unverifiable voting system, which was brought in as using the excuse of the hanging chads in Florida, and that disenfranchised virtually all the voters in Georgia for 20 years. So we finally have gotten that vote, that machine, to be declared unconstitutional, which is what I told the Secretary of State and the system evaluator in 2002. It took to 2019 to get that system declared constitutionally deficient. And then the Secretary of State's office turned around and bought another unverifiable system with the code accumulation coming out of a QR code, where all your votes are in a QR code, which no voter in Georgia can read, even with a QR code reader. So we still got some issues, to solve there, Mark. And in some ways, we are actually in worse shape today than Florida was in 2000.
Let me ask you this, though, focusing on 2024, where we are today, election coming up in 60 days, are both Democrats and Republicans feeling better about the integrity of the system in Georgia this year based upon these legislative changes?
Well, yes, I think that they are feeling some improvement. A lot of thanks goes to Lieutenant Governor here, Burt Jones, as well as the Speaker of the House, John Burns. They have been instrumental in pushing those changes through. We certainly are in better shape in 2024 than we were in 2020. We have put in a lot of things to stop the ballot trafficking and the ballot counterfeiting operations, ballot box stuffing, but we still have that risk of the voting machine itself being unverifiable. That's our biggest risk. But as you said, I think we are in a lot better shape this year than we were certainly in 2020 when we really got caught by surprise.
Well, it's going to be critical, because both when you look at the paths to 270, Donald Trump's clearest path, in my view, is Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. He wins that, he's the 47th president. Harris, on the other hand, if she loses Georgia, she has other paths she can win. But the two critical states, it seems to me, and we've run analysis after analysis, are Pennsylvania and Georgia. And both of them are extremely tight, as are all the swing states. It's really interesting, Garland. We had some forecasters come out today, both very credible, coming to completely different conclusions. the famed Democratic pollster, Nate Silver of Silver Bullet, he's got Donald Trump with a 58% chance to win the election, Kamala Harris 42. A gentleman, I can't remember his name, he supposedly has forecast 8 out of the last 9 elections. He says this election leans towards Kamala Harris. So again, folks, to illustrate the importance of these swing states, two well-respected people coming up with completely different results, looking at the same sets of data. So I think that really, really focuses the attention on the upcoming debate. Garland, what are you looking to see out of both candidates as we come up towards the debate next week with this race tight as a tick in 7 different states?
Well, Mark, you said something important there. Let me back up just for a second, because you mentioned Pennsylvania. And from an election integrity perspective, Pennsylvania presents a real problem for Donald Trump. There are still 80,000 votes there which were accepted into the certified results for which there was no voter who voted for those ballots. So in other words, there are 80,000 more ballots cast in Pennsylvania in the 2020 election than there are voters who voted. That discrepancy has never been resolved. Now, we have been putting more and more reconciliation procedures and rules in place. We have more to come here with the state election board in Georgia. But that is a problem there, and also the fact that they have counted votes after the election was over last year in Pennsylvania. And that's, if you remember, Mark, that's what changed the outcome in the state of Pennsylvania in 2020. So there is an extreme risk that that could happen again there, and a lot of these problems have not been corrected yet. So when you mentioned that, it just triggered me to just get that out there, because there is a deep concern in some of the other battleground states, that like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, as to whether or not there's been enough election integrity improvements to just secure an honest election, or are we going to have the results change 2 days after the election as they did in 2020?
Well, from what I'm hearing, Garland, I'm seeing from Michael Whatley to Laura Trump, they're telling us that they're going to have an army of people looking county by county at these precincts and the voting to make sure that from on the ground, they can do everything they can to ensure the integrity of this. So at least that's a step in the right direction. And again, I reiterate what we talked about in Georgia. I hope whether it's Pennsylvania or any of the other swing states, that both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are satisfied. Again, this is the operative word you used is having a fair election for everyone, to where the loser believes that there was enough integrity where the results don't get challenged. Because the last thing this country needs, Garland, is more legal challenges. It's already a divided enough country, and we hope that at the end of the day, we will end up having a fair and honest election. Garland, I know you got to leave after the half hour, but I want to thank you for presenting your views here on Election Edge, and thank you for your work to ensure that elections matter and that the integrity stands out for both sides. Thank you for being my guest today.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be with you.
All right, we're going to take a 90-second break, but when we come back, our Thursday regular guest, Cameron Moore, is going to join us, and I believe, I'm not sure, but I think he's joining us from Bedminster. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
And we're back, and I'm pleased to have Cameron Moore join me on the show today. Cameron's a regular guest here on Election Edge. Hey, Cameron, you were here in studio last Thursday, but I understand you've been traveling around the country. Can you brief our audience on where you've been and what you've seen as related to where we're looking at now in the 2024 election, 60 days out?
Yeah, I've been down in Palm Beach. Thanks for having me, Mark. Been down in Palm Beach. Drove by Mar-a-Lago. Seems like they're ramping up security down there, as they should. And now I'm over at Bedminster with some friends, playing some golf and getting some relaxation in.
Well, at Bedminster, you're literally in the beast of the belly, and at Mar-a-Lago, you're right with President Trump. So let me ask you this, Cameron. There's been a lot of talk lately. Bedminster, you're not too far from the Philadelphia area. There's been a lot of talk about the effort that Donald Trump is putting into Pennsylvania. He seems to be gathering some momentum in the state. I've seen some polling that indicates he's a couple points ahead. And Kamala Harris, she's holed up in Pittsburgh in her hotel. There's a lot of people starting to question this Harris-Walz strategy of avoiding the media. I mean, she's virtually copying Donald Trump's policies at this point. What do you make of this strategy of them deliberately not even wanting to communicate with the media when they're out on the campaign trail? And what do you think about Trump and his surge in Pennsylvania?
I believe Trump's surging in Pennsylvania, I believe, because of the fracking. We have a lot of natural resources there that we need to take advantage of so we can become energy independent and put some money back in the taxpayers' pockets. Kamala in hiding, it's just unbelievable. She's been hiding. Walz has been hiding. The people maybe pulling the strings are keeping them hiding. Maybe they don't want them to say certain things in the public. As we quickly approach this debate, it's going to be very interesting to see how she shows up here, if she even shows up. Pennsylvania is such an important state, as we know. It's one of the swing states and has high electoral college votes. So I think Trump is on the right path to shore this state up and move forward and win this election.
Well, I think you're right about that, Cameron. I mean, it is tight, but again, I'm seeing momentum. I don't think Pennsylvania voters are going to be fooled by Harris's switch on all these positions. I mean, Cameron, think about it. We've seen the Dave McCormick video. And, oh, by the way, Dave McCormick's doing a lot better too. He's within like a point or two of Bob Casey. So, the Pennsylvanians were told, no, we're against fracking. Now she's for fracking. They initially, she said she was for open borders. Now she's for building the wall. She came out and basically took Donald Trump's long-term capital gains tax plan and said, well, no, I really don't want to tax unrealized capital gains. We don't want to do that. Matter of fact, we want to keep the rate as is for people earning less than $1 million a year. And if you're earning over $1 million a year, we only want to make it 28%. She copied Trump's policies on no tax on tips. Cameron, I mean, if I didn't know better, Chameleon, she literally is shifting from the far left-wing position where she voted to the left of Bernie Sanders, where now she almost sounds like a center-left Republican.
She's definitely struggling in her race, and America doesn't want her policies, so they're going to move over to she's going to start moving forward towards Trump's policies to try to bring that vote in. But this is a little too little, too late. Her words and actions have not been in alignment. We've seen what she's done in the past. We've seen what she's done in this current administration, and I don't think America's buying it with this copycat scheme she has going.
Yeah, I hope you're right about that. Well, some polling came out just breaking before the show this afternoon. Emerson, which is a well-respected polling outfit, they have Harris +2. Rasmussen has Trump +1. In the Real Clear Politics average, she's up about 1.9%. But in these 7 swing states, Cameron, again, other than Pennsylvania, where I feel really good about Trump's position, and notwithstanding Garland's point that about what happened in 2020, what we have to overcome, but I really feel that Michael Whatley and Laura Trump are taking the proper steps, having people in the field, at the polling stations, in the precincts, to make sure that, to borrow the term, guard the vote, protect the vote, that we do have an election based upon proper counting such that it is fair. If it's fair, Cameron, I really believe Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. And I'm going to go back to what he said about Georgia, too. It's tight in Georgia, very, very tight. 20, 30, 40,000 votes either way. But Cameron, I really believe that Pennsylvania and Georgia and North Carolina, I think Donald Trump can win those 3 states. And if he does, he is going to be the president again. How do you see those 3 states? And what's your thoughts on how tight this is right now?
I think all those key battleground states are very important. I don't see it as tight as they're putting out there. I think as we advance further and our economy gets even more destroyed than it already is, and we have with these border problems, I think you're going to see more people go to Trump. I think they're probably working on setting up the steal again. Now they're talking about Russian election interference again. They're bringing that back up. That's the same playbook they used in 2016. So I think they know they're in trouble, but they're going to have to do a lot more work to get up to Trump and to beat Trump in this election as we progress.
You might be right about that, because Trump has traditionally performed way better than his polling averages are. And folks, as a point of reference, on this exact same date in the 2020 election, Hillary Clinton was up just under 4 points on Trump. Joe Biden was up 7. Well, we know how it turned out with Hillary. And again, Biden did not win by 71, by about 4. Cameron, you brought up the economy. We got word on Wall Street today, less than 100,000 jobs created in the month and 76,000 layoffs, jobs that were just lost. There is a lot of angst out there on the economy right now. Wall Street suffered a severe loss earlier this week, not only the technology stocks, but other sectors too. I got to believe with some of these economic policies of the Democratic Party, she can try to hide from Joe Biden's record. But this, joy and vibe campaign is not going to affect people. I mean, it is going to affect people, and they're not going to just vote on joy and vibe. They're going to vote their pocketbook.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these policies are just insane. If we're trying to rebuild this economy, we're not going to put out policies like reparations, which takes taxpayers' dollars and gives it to people that weren't slaves by people that never owned slaves. It's throwing money away. It's like they did in the Ukraine, and it's no doubt why our economy is in the place that it is, and it just seems to be getting worse by the day, and it's scary.
Cameron, you brought up a great point about reparations. I saw some tapes earlier this week where she was speaking with Reverend Al Sharpton, Charlemagne the God, and other Black media personalities. And this was again back in 2019, 2020. Okay, when she was running. Excuse me, she was running in 19. She was the first one out of the campaign. But she clearly was in favor of reparations at that point. Well, that topic seems to be coming up again. And you and I both know she is not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. This is another one of those I gotcha type issues. In other words, I know she believes in it. She has clearly stated in the past she believes in reparations. And yet now, Cameron, she's trying to distance herself from her own policies. And it's not just reparations. It's Medicare for all. It's Green New Deal. Ending the fracking. I know she's coming to the center and trying to sound like a Republican, but there is no center on reparations. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the American public, center right, center left, right, about the only ones on the far left are in favor of this. Cameron, this is another thing where God forbid she was elected, you and I both know damn good and well she would throw this issue at the American people and she would push for reparations.
Yes, I mean, she's flip-flopped from where she stood a few years ago to where she is now. And God forbid if she was elected, I don't believe she would be. I think she's going to go implement all these plans that she says she's going to implement. I think after she's known to be a liar, and I think after the election we're going to be in trouble because she's going to put all these policies out that she was promoting prior.
Yeah, and let's hope that scenario doesn't play out so that we're not faced with with that possibility. You brought up the Russians, election interference again. Cameron, it's sort of like what's the proverbial clock? It's going to it's going to be right two times a day. Geez, I mean, this is right on cue. I mean, the day after Governor Hochul's office is exposed for having Chinese spies right under her nose, sure enough, the Justice Department, and whether there's any credence to it or not, we're not saying there's no credence to it, but happened in 2016, happened in 2020. When the Democratic Party is in trouble, and again, folks, we're not talking about public polling. The internal campaign polls are a little bit different than the public polling. That tells me, Cameron, that they're having to try to play old cards. And frankly, when Garland comes out and they name a couple Russians trying to infiltrate, of course, right-wing influencers. Cameron, I mean, this is like on cue. Here we go again.
Yeah, something I'd also like to mention was a really curious poll that liberal Mark Cuban put out. He put out a poll saying, whose persona and character would you like to see your young children grow up as? I think this backfired on Mark Cuban and accurately reflects what America's people think. And with 800,000 people polled, it was a 70% vote for President Trump and 30% Kamala. So, that's right.
Yeah,
stand on the
That's a backfire if I've ever heard one. What do you make of what do you make of Putin's comment today? He, came out and he said, well, of course we were pulling for Kamala Harris to win this election. Trump put more sanctions on us than any other president. I mean, that Putin likes to mess with the current administration because basically if you're staring at Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden, you know who the dominant character in the room is, unfortunately. But Cameron, what'd you make about that? Is he really believing this stuff, or is this just an effort by the Russian leader to insert himself in some way in the U.S. election?
Well, Kamala would obviously be an easy opponent on the geopolitical playing field. But at the end of the day, I thought it was pretty humorous where he called her cackle fascinating, and I think he's probably just trolling right now. He's trolling her. I think he's a master troller, and he's just having fun with her. There's no threat to Putin from Kamala, and he knows it. I think he's just having fun with her.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Cameron. I mean, for Putin with everything the man has going on, fighting a war in Ukraine, all kind of international problems. I think you're right. I think he's just trolling. I think that's a good point. All right, look, we're going to take a 90-second break here. But when we come back, big news today. And Cameron, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Hunter Biden, think about the timing of this, changes his plea from not guilty to now he's going to plead guilty to federal tax charges. We're going to discuss that when we come back after the break. See you in 90 seconds.
Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here's your golden opportunity to advertise with Mark Schafltein. When you advertise on Election Edge, you've aligned your company with a trusted voice and connected with an audience that shares your values. Mark hosts the exciting new live show that delves into every facet of the 2024 U.S. presidential election, offering insightful analysis, expert interviews, and up-to-the-minute coverage of the key events and developments throughout the election season. When you advertise on Election Edge, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Mark's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Mark's followers will buy your product or service over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
And we're back at Patriot TV Election Edge. Catch us everywhere, folks. We're streaming on X, streaming on YouTube, patriot.tv. All right, Cameron, I asked you about Hunter Biden. What do you make of this? Here we're 60 days out before the election, and Hunter changes his plea on that federal tax evasion case.
I think this is a case of look here, don't look here. I think this tax evasion thing was a long time in the making. I think this is pretty minor in the big scheme of things. I'm not too concerned about this tax evasion thing. I'm more concerned about Hunter funding these biolabs out there in the Ukraine with this company Metabiota and the money laundering with his father. I think this is just to appease the people, showing that they're taking some kind of action. I do find it curious, though, that this is a Trump-appointed judge that he's against right now. And the sentencing is going to be December 16th. I think he's facing, up to 17 months. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens here. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, he's already paid the back taxes, so it's not a matter of it being paid. But, that raises a question. How does a guy like Hunter Biden get that type of money, and where'd that come from? But that's a whole nother issue at a whole nother place. But, yeah, it's sort of odd. I mean, I don't want to make too much into it either. I think it's a distraction more than an issue people care about. I mean, if there's 20 issues out on the board that are important, this is number 21, folks. So I don't want to make too much about it here. But one thing I do want to make a little bit of an issue about here, Cameron, Bobby Kennedy came out. He wants to campaign with Trump in these swing states. And, some of these states where he's on the ballot, he's trying to get his name taken off the ballot. Now, I can't remember whether it's Michigan or Wisconsin, but one of those states has laws clearly on the books that say, if you're on the ballot by X date, you stay on the ballot. But again, there was some late breaking news this afternoon. I don't have the full story on it yet, folks, but apparently there is a case going before a judge in North Carolina because Kennedy wanted his name off that ballot. And Cameron, I'm guessing Trump and Kennedy will likely campaign together in North Carolina because, folks, he was getting anywhere from 4 to 6% of the vote. And what we talked about yesterday on Election Edge, Trump's likely to get 70, 75, 80% of that vote. So, Cameron, what do you make about the fact Kennedy with Trump trying to get his name off ballots? How do you think that could swing? Very, very tight election.
Isn't it unbelievable that he can't get his name off the ballots? Well, Kamala just happened to put herself on it without any process. I think these swing states they're focusing on are very key. I think the RFK-Trump combination is going to be, it's a big threat to the establishment, to the uniparty and the deep state, and it's going to be pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. And, the interesting thing is North Carolina is scheduled to mail out their ballots, for people that want to vote early coming up, I think, in the next few days. So it'll be interesting to see if that judge's ruling causes any delay in the early voting to be, ballots to be sent out to North Carolina voters. All right, let me shift out west, Cameron. We haven't talked as much about this, but boy, illegal immigration and that border security, that is a giant issue in Arizona. We talk a lot about the economy, but in the state of Arizona, that is the number one issue because the state's been overwhelmed. That has got to bode well for Donald Trump. I mean, again, polling's all over the map. I've seen some Arizona polls that show Harris up by a point or two. I've seen some that show Trump up 3 or 4. Cameron, if that is the most important issue in Arizona, I've got to believe that that's going to bode well for Donald Trump in Arizona.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that anyone would have Kamala up in Arizona when this is an entry point for these illegal immigrants. And we saw what happened in Denver, and now it's happening in Chicago with these Venezuelan gangs, and Arizona is probably a target because they are at the one of the entry points. I think these people of Arizona do not want to have Kamala Harris in office. They want their border protected. They want their border secure and the lives of their families safe. And I'm a little concerned about these open borders right now and the effect it's going to have on our country with these gangs that are starting to break out.
I'm very concerned about it. I share that concern because look at this, folks. Colorado is not exactly a border state, and yet Venezuelan gangs, as you pointed out, Cameron, taking over a whole apartments. And we talked on Election Edge earlier this week about New York City had to spend $5 billion. That is a lot of dough to take care of illegal immigrants that are in New York City. And 75% of crime was related to illegal immigrants in New York City? I mean, my goodness. And again, Cameron, that doesn't even take the social cost of all the drugs that come across and the treatment and the deaths from fentanyl and the social cost of housing, educating, and having people to be fed. I mean, the social cost of this open border policy have been enormous. And of course, what is Harris trying to do, Cameron? Tack back to the center, even stealing Trump's ideas about building a wall, trying to say, well, I was a tough prosecutor. Maybe she was, but her party has been the party of no voter ID, no identification, let as many illegals in as possible, and they don't want to stop it. And then they try to blame Trump for railroading a bill that even under the best of circumstances would still have allowed 5,000 people a day. Cameron, I got to believe, when it really boils down to it, economy and the border, Trump holds the cards on those two issues, but will it be enough?
I think it will be enough. I mean, what is the number now? Between 8 and 10 million illegal immigrants coming across our border. I think that their plan is to probably put a ballot in each one of their hands, which is why we definitely need to go back to paper, pen, voter ID, signature verification, and make sure only our legal votes count, because 8 to 10 million votes is a significant amount, and it's deeply concerning. But I think we'll make it through this.
I found something else interesting this week, folks. And again, I'm going to peel the onion back for you. For those of you who, it doesn't have to just be mainstream media or legacy media, you see it all over the internet too. A lot of these polling outfits are talking about the gender gap. And they always talk about the fact, well, Harris is leading among women. The lead has grown. It was at 12, now it's at 14, now it's at 15. And Harris is swamping Trump among women. Then all of a sudden, news comes out, and we, again, folks, we give it to you straight here on Election Edge. All of a sudden, the news comes out, well, wait a minute here. Trump is gaining among men, and particularly men that look like Cameron and I on this telecast. So, Cameron, we are at a point now where it's close to a 30-point gap between men and women. In other words, women are going for Harris in the 12 to 15% range. Men are going for Trump in an almost identical 12 to 15. I never thought I would see this, regardless of these gender politics. But Cameron, it's really happening out there where 12 to 15 points supposedly going for Harris, 12 to 15 men going for Trump. Do you believe those numbers, and are they accurate?
I don't believe the white woman numbers, but Trump's definitely crushing it with the non-college educated and college educated white male voters. Kamala seems to be getting desperate with these white men for Trump, or white men for Kamala initiative she's putting out there. I think she's in a bit of trouble with this demographic right now, and she knows it. A
bit of trouble. Again, folks, I'll break it down for you. on non-college educated white voters, particularly in swing states, Pennsylvania and Georgia. Trump's polling upwards of 70% in certain areas of the country. Again, I'm just talking about Pennsylvania, Georgia. It could be similar to Michigan, Wisconsin, but even college educated men are going for Trump also. So my point here is this. I hate identity politics. I think it's the worst form of politics, but whether we like it or not, that's what the Democratic Party promotes, and they do a damn good job of promoting identity politics, segregating people into genders, race, whatever, you name it. They do a pretty good job of it. So playing their game, we have to address this, and it is a real issue out there. All right, getting to the fact that we know that that's where Trump has an advantage. Again, Cameron, some polling came out late today. Emerson has Harris +2, Rasmussen +1, but getting away from all the polling pieces, because it really varies and it's a snapshot. If the election were held today, Cameron, my belief is Donald Trump would win. How do you see it right now, and what does Trump have to do heading into that debate to finally break this thing up to where he puts his own base at ease, and we can see if we're going to end up with a razor-tight election or if Trump can cruise to victory?
I think he just needs to put it on cruise control. He's not concerned about this debate. He's done so many of them. He doesn't even need to prepare. Kamala, on the other hand, is going to need to prepare in a big way because she's going up against the beast here, and she's not going to fare well. And I think this is going to be a really fun debate to watch, assuming she even shows up. So she's in trouble. She has no shot here. Trump just needs to keep it on cruise control and let them destroy themselves, which they certainly will once she has to get on camera with a microphone in her hand.
Have you noticed what I think you're right about that. Have you noticed the same thing? Trump looks pretty relaxed right now. I mean, he's out there, he's hamming it up with the audiences. I mean, he's smiling. I saw part of his interview with Hannity last night when he was in Pennsylvania talking about the fracking issue. And despite the lawfare, and again, we'll talk about this in just a minute, Trump does seem like he's having fun out there. And you're right, Cameron. He's debated, a lot more than she has. I just find it amazing how they want this basement strategy for Harris. She's going to have to come out of that shell. I mean, this to me makes no sense. It's 60 days to go. If I'm a candidate, I want to be out there with the people. Cameron, we got a minute left here. Are you seeing the same Trump I am? Loose, confident, feeling great.
He's loose. He's confident. The guy has no fear. And again, he's on cruise control. And I think he's having fun with this. And they're gonna fall on themselves come in the next month. It's going to be really fun to watch. He's just going to, with the sentencing coming up too. That's going to be interesting. How much further he pulls ahead after the sentencing. So I think he's on cruise control.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Okay, we're almost out of time here. But Cameron, you're up at Bedminster. 20 seconds left. Tell our viewers what's it like up there. I mean, it looks like a beautiful place where you're at. Close it out for us here.
Yeah, Bedminster's a beautiful property, beautiful golf course facilities, dining room. President was here earlier in the week. Yesterday, he's gone now. He went out to do that speech in New York. It's a special, magical place, and you can feel the energy here is strong.
Well, Cameron, we look forward to having you back out here in California sometime soon. If not, we'll catch you from the road. This man leads a tough life. Bedminster, Mar-a-Lago, he's a great guy, and he's one of our key people here at Patriot TV. Cameron, thank you for joining me today. Thanks for all you Patriot TV viewers and listeners. We'll be back tomorrow. Jason Burmis on Election Edge. See you tomorrow.